Uh, Hi, everybody. Michael Farrar with Drawing here. I'm glad you could make it today. I think drawing is important because it helps you to see things. I've had many a student say halfway through, say, a watercolor session or acrylic session, man, I wish I could draw better. Well, now's your chance. I'm going to start with the very basics and work my way through. I'm going to show you how to use graphite pencil, charcoal, ink, and ink wash. I'm also going to teach you how to draw things in perspective and in proportion, and I'm going to show you how to draw the human head and the human body. And the last week or so, we're going to work with the ink, and I prefer a black ink like an India ink. This is called Chimney ink, and you certainly do not have to buy a bottle this big. They come in little tiny bottles, which is the greatest of plenty for you. But to get started, let me say that the basic shapes are a pyramid, the ball shape, the egg shape. I'm also going to teach you how to shade, which is very important. The cone, a little crooked there. The cylindrical shape, and the deal with this is, whatever this curve is, this curve has to be the same. And whatever this curve is, this curve up here is a mirror image. So it's going to look something like that. And then the box, which looks something like this. And if you reduce these to the very basic of shapes, you've got a slanted straight line, you've got half of an arc, and you've got a straight vertical, and a line like that, and a long line like that. So everything you look at basically can be drawn with those 6 or 5 shapes rather. So that's the basic shapes. Let me give you some information about pencils and charcoal both. Pencils run in a series, and what I mean by that is, let's go like this. Now the H stands for hardness. And the B stands for blackness. So as you go up the chart this way, the pencil is getting lighter and lighter. As you go down this way, it's getting blacker and blacker. Lead pencils actually haven't had lead in them for centuries. It's a graphite and ceramic mixture, and the more ceramic they put in, the harder it makes the pencil, so it makes a real light stroke on the paper. The problem I have with really light pencils is it's hard to see, so I have a tendency to press harder. And if this is my paper, you know, if I held it up on edge and looked at it like this, I've got all these little lines where I've pressed down really hard with these harder pencils trying to make them more visible to my eye. If I change my mind and I want to erase, I can erase the pencil line, but I still have these little miniature grooves in my paper. So my suggestion is learn how to use these pencils right in here. I'm going to show you how. And if necessary, you could get maybe this one or this one, a 4H or a 3H, just to sort of smooth out any scratchy, scritchiness in your shading technique. But basically, I use these all the time. 2B. I call it my Shakespeare pencil. To be or not to be. Joke for the day. Okay. So, charcoal is nothing more than burned wood. And you can buy hard charcoal or soft. And the soft is the darker. And it comes in a series like this. It basically just goes to 4 of those. And it comes in vine and pencil form. And this is what the vine looks like. It may be a little fatter in diameter. Here's a little fatter. On up to chunks as big as my fist. Not really sure what one does with charcoal that big, but anyway. And this is what the pencil looks like. And you just sharpen it in a pencil sharpener or with a knife. And it also comes in a compressed form. And it comes either square or round. These make a very, very black mark, but they do not blend very well. And the thing about charcoal is it's very forgiving. In pencil, we always work light to dark, like in a watercolor. With the charcoal, you can start anywhere. And these are called blending stumps. These are used in charcoal. And they come in various sizes. These smaller ones are called cotillions. They're Italian words. Most terminology in the art world is either from the French or from the Italians, because before World War II, Rome and Paris sort of ruled the art world. I've had this one for decades. I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many. But all it is a piece of cloth that's wound very, very tightly. And with this, you can blend and get your value. And value is how light or how dark something is. I'm just taping this down so hopefully I can keep my left hand out of your way so you can see better. This copy paper is great for notes and some practice. It is too light and too smooth to do any artwork on. Plus it's got acid in it. When they make it out of trees. And trees have got a tannin acid in it. And if you've ever looked at somebody's old newspaper collection, you know, the paper is turned almost to this color. Well, that's the tannin acid in there reacting with the atmosphere. This paper, if you keep it long enough, will turn that tan. Whereas this paper, this good drawing paper, is acid-free. And it won't turn that. And on here it'll say what weight it is. This just says heavy weight. It should say 180 pounds. There's the acid-free. It's a medium surface. There's the 80 pound. Paper comes in different poundages. Like this paper here is probably, I'll say 4 pounds. And good art paper starts about 60 pounds. And there's hundreds, literally hundreds of kinds of paper. It depends on what kind of surface you want. I said that this paper was too smooth. Again, if you picked it up and looked at it with a magnifying glass, it's just going to be flat as a fritter, just like that. This 80 pound that I recommend in the Strathmore, because it's pretty good for everything we're going to be working with, has got a little bump in it, and that's called a tooth, just like a tooth out of your head. And that's good for catching the various medium, the pencil or the charcoal or the ink wash. And paper goes on up to about 600 pounds. That's usually used for watercolor though. Anyway, Okay. Since we are dealing with black and white and shades of gray in between, we're dealing with value, how light or dark something is in that format. So we've got the white of the paper and the blackest we can make the charcoal or the pencil, and all the grays in between. And if you're having trouble converting color to grays, what you need to do is take a photograph of whatever you're trying to draw and run it through a black and white copier. And presto, there's your value study. You don't have to scratch your head and squint and try to figure it out. It's right there for you. If you squint and look at something, it does two things. It helps define the light areas. Actually, it does three things. It helps define the light areas in a composition. It also helps define the dark areas, and it does away with the detail. You know, everybody wants to jump in and start doing the little busy detail stuff first, and that should be left till last. Think of baking a cake. You know, you got to mix up the batter, bake that off, put the cake together, put the icing on, then you put, you know, Happy Birthday Susie on. You can't just put Happy Birthday Susie on something. You got to bake the cake first. Well, all of this shading is making and baking the cake and icing it, and the details are the Happy Birthday Susie part. I'm going to show you three different ways you can use charcoal. While I got them here, let me show you. These are some of the materials we'll need this session, this 6-week session. Couple round brushes. Just a number 2 pencil or so. I like these fine line ink pens. They don't have to be real expensive. You can go to a grocery store or drugstore somewhere and find, you know, 1 or 2 in a pack. Get them. They come in real handy. Masking tape will come in handy. A pair of scissors may come in handy. This is called a white eraser, and it's great for pencil marks when you need to make corrections. This thing is called a kneaded eraser, and when you first get them, you know, they're nice and clean and they're wrapped in plastic, and they look more like this guy. You never get this out of here. They look like this, kneaded rubber, and they'll last forever. If you pull it apart and put it back together like this, it evidently is adding oxygen or something in there because it helps clean it. But this works very well with charcoal. And you can even pinch it and make a really fine line like that if you want to just get a little highlight here or there on the side of a vase or something. So there's that. Let me go over a couple compositional tips for you, and then we'll move on. Okay, this is going to be quick. Instead of getting halfway through a composition and realizing you've made a mistake, take the time and do a thumbnail sketch. And artists have been doing these for centuries. And they're called thumbnails because they're small. And what you can do, you can work out your compositional problems and the lighting and the light and medium and dark proportions this way, instead of jumping in and working on one of these bigger sheets and getting yourself stuck in a position you don't know what to do. So say I wanted to do a still life. It's best, think of thirds. It's called the rule of thirds. It's best to have like a low horizon line. It can be a tabletop, it can be a line of water, it could be the line of the land, and then you got mountains up in here. But anyway, this will be 1/3, and this will be 2/3. Or you could have a bunch of mountains This could be 2/3, and you got 1/3 up here. You never want to go like 1/2, 1/2. That's considered boring, so don't do that. Every picture you put together has something in there that's going to grab the viewer's attention. It can be the latest flower. It can be the biggest flower. It can be the oddest shaped thing in the composition. It could be a candle holder when all the candles are laying on the table flat. Something's going to grab the viewer's attention. It's called a focal point. And you don't want to put it in the dead center, and you don't want to hang it out in the corners. So you're thinking, well, where can I put it? Let's go back to the rules of thirds. If you draw light pencil lines on your paper, trying to break it up into thirds, or you take pieces of string or something and lay on there. Where these lines intersect, that's a great place to put that attention getter. And a picture can have more than one. I think of the three bears. You got your papa bear, your mama bear, and your baby bear. So you may have a real big one, a middle-sized one, and a little one. It's easier to get a sense of depth in a landscape than you can in a still life, but still you can get it in a still life. I'm going to draw a small one here. I'm going to make some mistakes in here, and it's easier when I have live bodies here, but I've got Amber, and Amber is my #1 assistant camera person.
And I am fully alive.
And she is fully alive. So I'm going to draw some things here that are wrong, and hopefully Amber will realize what's going on here. Okay. I've done a couple no-nos there. I'll cut you some slack. What I've done, I've sort of strung them along like soldiers marching down the page. There's no sense of depth at all. I've also used the bottom of the paper as the bottom of my drawing. It'd be much more interesting if I put a tabletop or a windowsill or a shelf or something there, and then if I put one object in front of the other, ever going to stand up on its own like that. I'm going to turn that box or whatever it is this way and get a little depth. I've got even numbers of objects. It's always more interesting if you can have uneven, like 3s and 5s and 7s and so forth. So I'm going to throw another something or other in there. Let's do a teapot. Amber, have you ever seen any of the Gromit and Wallace movies, the claymation? Oh man, they are hysterical. Anyway, I watched a documentary on behind the scenes of Wallace and Gromit the other night. Wallace is this inventor. I mean, he does crazy stuff like invents pants that walk up walls and stuff. And he's a real dork. Gromit is his dog. Gromit never barks or says anything. He does it all with expressions. And he's smarter than Wallace.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's very funny. But anyway, what I've done here, I've put, you know, the bowl in front of the bottle in front of the box, and the teapot back here. I've got uneven things. They're not just lined up like soldiers. If you've got objects and you're trying to make them look real, one way to do that is if you can cast some shading and some shadows. And it's best if you can have one light source. What I mean by that is if you have a light source over here, you know, there's a lighthouse in New Jersey that has got an original Thomas Edison light bulb in it that's been burning for 24/7 since whenever Thomas Edison was making light bulbs.
That's insane.
I know.
It's pretty cool.
It is very cool. So here's my light source. So it's going to be light on this side and it's going to be darker on this side. What we're doing with pencil or charcoal or ink or whatever is we're creating an illusion that these flat objects are not flat. We're fooling the eye. And you notice how it's dark inside the bowl on this side, but it's light on this side. It's light on the bowl outside on this side, but it's dark on this side. You gotta stop and think sometimes. So here comes the teapot. Shade all this a little darker. Let's say there's a shadow under the banana. Shadows can be confusing because you got to think several things, particularly if you're doing a landscape. You got to consider if it's spring or fall, winter or summer. You got to consider the time of the day, because as the earth turns, the sun appears to be low in the sky and then high and then gets low again. So if you go outside 12 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you look down and the shadow's going to be, you know, here's your feet, there's your belly, and here's your nose and your eyes and your ears. Have you noticed that since we're all wearing masks, everybody's ear sticks out?
Yep.
So anyway, here's your arms hanging down. Okay, if the sun's right up over you, the shadow's going to be right here, something like this. But later in the day, while you're standing here, just do a little stick man. Maybe he's walking. And the sun's lower, the shadow's going to be a lot longer. So you got to look and see. That's one of the things students have told me also from taking my drawing class, is they learn to look at stuff and to analyze it. I had a woman in a drawing class one night say, you know, I've looked at bottles all my life, but I've never actually seen, you know, all the curvatures, all the different facets of a bottle. She was trying to draw up a Dasani water bottle, and you think, you know, a water bottle is a water bottle, but trust me, they're different. Anyway, back to this little still life. This could cast a shadow here, this could cast a shadow out here, and this can cast a shadow out here. So what I've done, I've put these in front of each other. I've set them on something besides just the bottom of the paper. I've shaded them, and I've cast some shadows. All this helps that illusion along that these are three-dimensional objects sitting there. You know, you could put something behind these guys. You could do paneling. You could do fancy wallpaper. You could do a window, you know. Let's do a little window here. And here's your mountains and maybe this Maybe the sun's not up yet. Maybe you got a dead tree out here. Just one. Lightning hit it or something. So anyway, you know, think, look at stuff, try your hand at just small things first, and then work up to more complicated things. So that's some compositional tips. Let me give you just a couple more, and then we'll get into the charcoal and the proportioning. If I'm trying to make a picture, I need to think about having a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. And if I can get 3 values on everything, you know, a light, a medium, and a dark on everything in there, it's going to help that illusion again. So let's go with a higher horizon line. There's some mountains. Foothills. So you got a plain out here. And you got a road. Now to get that sense of depth into your picture, the road has got to be narrower back here than it is up here. If I'm standing right here, hi guys, it's going to look really wide here, but skinny back here. So if I want to put some things in this picture now, say I want to do a house right here. This house is so close to me where I'm standing, I can tell that it's made out of vinyl siding or brick or cinder block or whatever. I'm going to put a couple windows in there. Looks like a log cabin. Maybe I live in a log cabin house here. And you see the shakes on the roof and all that. And you got a chimney. Okay. Say I have a neighbor back here. His house is going to be smaller in scale, lighter in value, and less detailed than my house. Remember, I'm trying to get the sense of here, there, and way back there. Say he's got a neighbor, he lives up here on this ridge. So this guy is like so far away, you can barely make it out at all. If you wanted to emphasize this more, you could put in fence posts going down the road, or telephone poles, or something like that. Actually, as you get closer to this horizon right here, the telephone poles or fence posts get a little shorter, a little shorter, a little shorter. Plus, they seem to be getting closer together. There's no ratio on that, so I can't say, 1 to 5 or something. Say the sun is just peeping over the mountain here. So this side of my house is going to be in shadow. And it's going to cast a shadow out here, maybe even on the road. All these fence posts are going to cast a shadow. This side of his house is going to be a little bit darker. And even that guy's is going to be a little bit darker. So that's one way to achieve that depth in a landscape. Here you don't have that much sense of a depth, but here you do. Actually, Leonardo da Vinci was the first to discover it, and he called it aerial perspective, or in painting terms, blue perspective, because if we were painting, as you get further towards the far distance there, everything's going to be getting a little bluer or a little blue-grayer. Okay. Enough on that. Okay. So, three ways to work with charcoal. First off, I'm going to start, charcoal is brittle. They're going to break, they're going to crack. Don't worry about it. I'm going to make like a little puddle or pile of charcoal dust right here. And I'm going to take one of these shading stumps, and it's actually shaped like the cone, one of the basic shapes. I'm going to load up the edge of that cone with this dust, and I'm going to lay the long side of the cone on the paper, and I'm going to draw with that. I'm not going to use the tip and mash it down. I'm going to take two of the circles, two of the sphere shapes, and I'm going to combine them. Looks sort of like an 8. Let's say the light's coming from the upper left. So I need to have this pair sitting on something. So let's go with the tabletop. Now I can shade this in the way the pear is shaped, which is sort of round. That's what I'm doing, is a pear. Sorry, forgot to mention that. Join the top and bottom. Shading like this is called contour shading because you're following that curve, that contour. And pears have a smooth skin in comparison to, say, pineapples. Things are either smooth or rough skin. They either absorb light or they reflect light to make things simple. So somewhere along the line, I'm going to have to reflect some white light off of this smooth skinned pear. And you think, okay, watermelons versus peaches, or red peppers versus strawberries. Since this is roundish, I'm going to make my strokes roundish this way. Okay, we're getting somewhere. I'm going to take that same piece of charcoal, I'm going to use just the side of it. And I'm going to make a dramatic value change here. That's using the side of the little chunk of charcoal. Then take that dark and blend it into the lighter, like so. You can blend with Q-tips, you can blend with a piece of Kleenex, but do not use your fingers because your fingers have got a natural oil in them, and that will smudge and make your drawings look dirty, and you don't want that. The Q-tips and makeup applicators shaped sort of like Q-tips work great. You don't want to buy the shading stumps. Beginning to look like a pear, I think. Okay. Pears usually have little imperfections in them, little dots or something, so I'm going to add a couple of those in here. And the pears also have a real skinny stem that comes out, and then it gets really fat, really broad like that. So I'm going to put a stem there. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser. Remember I said I could pinch it into a real skinny little line? So I'm going to do that. And this is where the light's hitting. Right there. And put one down here on the bowl body of the pear, sort of like that. So there's that. And I can cast a shadow back here. Another thing about shadows is the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. But it depends on what you're casting the shadow on. You know, if you're casting the shadow on a white tablecloth, it's going to be more stark than if you were casting it on a baby blue tablecloth, or a plaid tablecloth, or a wine red tablecloth. I'm trying to show you 4 ways to work with charcoal. So basically that's 3. I showed you the shading stump using the side of the charcoal and then using the tip. Custodians love me for this next one. They do. Since charcoal has a tendency to smudge, you need to put a fixative on that once it is finished. And you can go to the art supply stores or to the mail order places and get charcoal fixative, and it's expensive and it smells. All of them smell to high heavens. Just go to the dollar store or grocery market or somewhere and get you a can of Aquanet hairspray. And it doesn't even, it can be any of their colors. You know, they come in pink and blue and green, a whole different rainbow of Aquanet hairsprays. They all work the same. But what you want to do, you want to hold it at a slight distance. It goes a real light coat. Let it dry, come back, give it 2 or 3 coats, and that's going to protect it. If you get it too close or too wet, the paper's going to curl up. What you could do in that case is try to lay it back over, flip it over and spray the back, and that should relax it back flat. But one thing you can do is you can cover the whole paper with charcoal. I won't do the whole thing, but give you an idea here. I'll give you an idea here on the edge how dark this compressed charcoal is. That's not as dark. But you see, it just does not blend very well, whereas this blends real nicely. Anyway, using your kneaded eraser, you're going to draw with it. And say I wanted to do, I don't know, let's do a night scene. And I've got partial moon out. Trying to get a sharper point on my moon. And maybe you've got a cabin up here on ridge. You can do this with oil paint and paint thinner. And I just blew one lady's socks off in class one day doing it. She was like, "That is fantastic. I've never seen anything like that before." I said, "Well, thanks." But I could actually get better detail with my brushes and some Q-tips than I can with my Kneaded Eraser. So anyway, I need to go back and make this roof a little wider. And underneath the roof is going to be cast a shadow. It's got a tin roof on it. And this is going to be a shadow. Probably should have used a larger sheet of paper, but anyway, you get the idea. This needs to go down a little bit. So there's the fourth and final way you can draw with charcoal. I had 2 boxes of paints and varnishes and Aquanet and you name it, spray stuff, you know, aluminum wheel cleaner, all sorts of stuff. And one I was going to keep and one I was going to give to homes for the habitat. And they came to pick it up because I had big bulky stuff too. And you know, I gave them the one I meant to keep. And so, I mean, like, there went about 10 cans of black spray paint that I needed, all my Aquanet, all my, oh well, I'm sure it went to a good home and a good cause. So, there's the charcoal. Let me show you how to shade with a pencil real fast. If you hold the pencil out here at the end, it's very hard to make a dark mark with it. So, say I do that pear again, or we'll do something. Maybe we'll do that. So anyway, just barely touch the point or side of the pencil to the paper. And it's funny, I actually like to draw with a duller pencil. And again, if this is the paper, looking up, you know, holding up an edge like this with a magnifying glass, if you've got a dull pencil, it will ride up here on the surface. And it's easier to make corrections. But if you got a sharp pencil, you tend to make those little grooves in the paper again, and they will stay with you till the end of time. You cannot get rid of them. They're just there. So anyway, I always turn to paper to make it easier on me instead of, sometimes I can get this and sometimes I can't. But anyway, hold it out here at the end. Just remember, every time you go over it, you're making it darker. And when I said to get a 3 or a 4H, some people shade like this, and they've got these sort of scritchy things going on. If you go over this in a different direction, which is called cross-hatching, one way to shade, with that 3 or 4, it helps blend it all together so you get rid of these scratchy looking marks. But right now I'm open to the light source being on either side, probably be on the right side, because I know apples have a smooth, hard surface versus jelly or pudding. So it's going to have a white reflected light right back to my eye. Our eyes, if you look at somebody, have got a little white reflected light in there. And the eye is soft, but the eye is wet. That's why we have that white reflected light coming back to our eyes. Humans almost always have one per eye, and wildlife usually have 2. Don't ask me why. But you can make longer strokes. You can do almost like a little chain like that. You can do little tiny strokes. I had a lady in class one night, and she had already started this really nice stream in the snow. And it was an hour and a half, 2.5 hour class, and she probably didn't shade in that much in 2.5 hours. Some people have got way too much patience.
Yeah.
I would not have had that kind of patience. I mean, it was a beautiful drawing. Don't get me wrong, but I couldn't sit there for 2.5 hours just doing that little bit. I mean, anyway.
I'd be stressed.
Yes, I would have lost interest.
Yep.
I think of drawing as contemplative. Put on some nice music, get a cup of tea, get a nice beverage, whatever you like to drink, and just sit there and let the stress go away from you. You're shading in, you're relaxing, you're in your own little world creating. I'm going to have a white spot right there. I've seen lots and lots of nice water scenes and landscapes ruined because they've got, all this done in and shaded and looks really nice, and they don't know how to do clouds, or they don't know what to do with the sky, so they do something like this, and it just ruins it. So I would rather see blank paper than scratching like that for clouds, or you got say you got landmass over here, and you got the shoreline, and you got water, and you don't know how to do water because water is very hard, and water takes on all sorts of values and shapes. It can be still, it can be silvery, it can be almost black. You got white caps, you've got beads of sweat on a cold drink up to the Pacific Ocean. It's can be maddening. Don't do that and say, oh well, that's water. No, that's just scratching. Don't ruin a good drawing. I'd rather see blank paper there. Okay, so there's my reflected light. Now, I can't go lighter. I probably should have started lighter, but I couldn't. I guess if I practiced, I haven't practiced drawing in a while. If you bear harder, you're going to get a darker mark. If you choke up on your pencil, you're going to get a darker mark. I always ask my class, can I get darker? They'll say yes. So I do this. I color along, Can I get darker? And they'll say yes. So I'm coloring along, Can I get darker? And they'll say maybe. I'm coloring along. So anyway, by the time you get down to here and you put some little oomph behind it, you can get black. So I've gone from the white of the paper to a very light gray, to gray, to a medium gray, to a medium dark gray, to a dark gray, to black. So that's probably 7 values right there. And I'm just asking you to get 3, a light, medium, and a dark. Just like anything else, the more time you put in on it, probably the better drawing you're going to come up with. So I'm going to go this way with my shading, do some cross-hatching, and what I'm going to do is sort of smooth this out, and I'm going to be making it a little darker. I've choked up on that pencil some. And this obviously isn't going to be like a Granny Smith or a Golden Delicious. It's probably going to be more like a Red Delicious, going by the value. But you want things to be subtle. You don't want like a band of white and a band of gray and a band of dark gray or medium gray, and then you don't want it to look like a beach ball. You want it to be subtle, and that's why it's good to just color a little bit at a time instead of going in big arcing movements probably when you first start getting out. But this is getting it more to one value. There's something called a lost and a found edge. I'll go over that in a minute. Betty Edwards came up with this idea, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. And it's called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And she did this book, and it's full of drawing exercises, and it's one of the best drawing books I've ever seen. And it's called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. But her whole thing is, the left side is the creative side, and the right side is the logical side. And when you're drawing and it doesn't look like a cow, or it doesn't look like a pansy, or it doesn't look like the quesadilla you're about to eat or whatever, your brain is kicking in saying, well, it doesn't look like the cow or the quesadilla, etc. But if you turn that photograph you're working from upside down and you draw it upside down and you shade it upside down, then the right side of the brain can't kick in and say, it doesn't look like a cow or a quesadilla. It sort of puts it in neutral. And you can draw what you see without your brain criticizing you every movement of the way. It's a marvelous book. It really is. Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. Always give credit to people who have good ideas, and she had a very, very good idea. So I'm just bringing this blend, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, out to sort of the center of this apple. At home, if you're right-handed, try to set up a card table or something that you can leave set up and put you up a little still life. I'm going to draw a still life here in a few minutes, show you how to proportion and shade. Put up a light with a 100-watt bulb in it, and probably over your left shoulder, and draw. It's easier with one light source. In here we've got windows, we've got a door, we've got fluorescent light, which is just bouncing everywhere. But if you have that one light source, it will make life a lot easier. If you can't do that, just imagine, okay, say the light's coming from the left, that means all the shadows are going to be on the right. And if it's vice versa, the light's up here, all the shadows are going to be on this side. You can't have shadows bouncing every which way. You gotta make a decision and stick with it. One of the difficulties with drawing outside is, as the earth turns, you know, it looks like the sun is changing. You know, it's here when I sit down to start drawing, and it's over here when I'm finished. What do I do with shadows? Well, you can come back another day and shade in after you've basically drawn in what you want, or you can take photographs, or you can lightly shade in where you want the shadows to be, and by the time you get to here, you can make changes so, you know, it follows. The impressionists, particularly Monet, who was a painter, realized that the light from 10 to 12 was a certain way, and from 12 to 2 was a certain way, and from 2 to 4 was a certain way. So he would have 3 paintings, 3 canvases, and from 10 to 12 he'd work on this canvas, and from 12 to 2 he'd get out that second canvas and work on it, and when 2 to 4 came up, he'd work on the 3rd canvas. So he was consistent every day, and he was a great painter because of that. One thing is going to be difficult in this class, since I don't have live people, is I always do a unit on the human body, and we take turns posing for each other. And I don't have a room full of people to pose, so we're going to have to work around that. But anyway, we'll think of something to do.
You draw people in masks these days.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this darker side just a little bit darker. And if you look at things very, very closely, the dark really doesn't run right up to this edge. There's a little bit of refracted light from somewhere in the room. So actually the dark stops about here, and then you've got this little bit lighter light at the very edge. I think it's easier to capture with pencil than it is with charcoal. I think charcoal is more forgiving to start with. That's why I always try to start my students with it. One of the things I gave as homework in my drawing classes, and I always give homework, not because I'm a mean old man, but because the more you draw, the better you become. And it really doesn't matter what you draw. It's just the fact that you're drawing. And you can develop muscle memory in your hand and your arm. Anyway, this is drawn to a close here. I need to put a stem on this apple. They have more of a little thing like that. They don't have an exaggerated stem like a pear. And in here, you know, it's got that little dimple that it grows out of. Probably should have been lighter on that side. Let me see if I can lighten it. Yep, no problem. And why I say that is because, just like the bowl, this is catching the light here. It's going to be catching the light inside there. So I'm going to show you that very, very lightly. So there's your apple, and it's sitting on something. I was going to show you a lost edge. Say you've got something else here, another piece of fruit or something, and it's the same value as this side of the apple. Say it's a plum or something, and it's sitting right about here. If you shade it in, the same value as this right here, you can't tell where one of those ends and the other begins. That's the lost edge. It's a neat compositional thing sometimes. And one more thing about composition, everybody thinks that the composition has got to fit in these four sides. And really it doesn't. It actually increases interest in a picture if you can run something off the sides or the top and or the bottom. So there's the lost edge.
Yeah, it looks like it has a growth.
Yeah. And if you do it on a light side, say say you got something really, really light. Barely touching the paper, and it's still darker than I want. I don't know if I could do it now, but I used to be able to crack walnuts in my hand. So here's something light, and you got that in between them maybe to indicate that here's object one, here's object two. Does that make sense? Okay, losing my claw. So, over on that table, I have got still life set up. There are 7 things there. I'm going to teach you how to proportion first of all. And I'm going to do it in charcoal, since it's the most forgiving. And since it's a lot of stuff, I'm going to use a larger sheet of paper. And you've probably seen people do this in the movies or TV shows, and you're wondering what they're doing. What they are doing is they are getting a measurement. I'm going to use a smaller piece. The shortest thing in that composition of cans and boxes and bottles is that Dixie cup. So what I need to do is I'm going to shut one eye, I'm going to hold my arm out straight, I'm going to put the tip of the charcoal right on the top of that Dixie cup, and I'm gonna mark the bottom of the Dixie cup with my thumb like that. I'm gonna bring that over here. Now, if I wanna fill up this whole sheet of paper, that's not gonna do it. I've got to make this bigger here, so it can help fill up this sheet of paper. Because what will happen is, a lot of times, people will have that sheet of paper, and, you know, they'll have, there's a bottom of their table or whatever, they'll have, you know, little things like this. Something like this or whatever. Okay, all these things that you reach out and touch are considered positive space. A little positive mark there. All this empty space is considered negative space. What I'm trying to get you to do is to put the tallest thing about here and end it here. So it's going to come down. Show you a couple of different ways to make bottles too. So there, I'm filling up my paper better. But the way to do it is to find the shortest thing, which is that Dixie cup. Take that measurement. Here's the top, here's the bottom, marked with my thumb. And arbitrarily say, okay, I'm going to make it this tall. Or better yet, let's say it's only going to be this tall. I'm making my own ruler here. So this is going to be my Dixie cup height. And it's about in the middle. And the great thing about this measurement is, this way it's always going to be the same height. It's always going to be one Dixie cup high there, and this is always going to be one Dixie cup high here. Do you follow? Yes. Okay. So you can take that same measurement and turn it sideways and find out, say, how wide that Triscuit box is, or how wide the Coke bottle is, or how wide the whole composition is from the far left of the Triscuit box to the far right of the Coke bottle is. It's just a way to check and double check yourself. And that's one thing I'm always doing when I'm drawing. I'm double checking myself. In building a house or a pyramid or whatever, builders from the pyramid days have used a string with a weight at the bottom called a plumb bob. And that way their walls are perfectly straight up and down. Imagine a plumb bob coming down through any of those objects over there. It will help you to divide it and draw it better, left and right, left and right, left and right. You can also imagine a ruler, and I'm going to go over there for just a minute. Put that ruler here. This up and say, okay, it lines up right below the lettering on this can and right above the little lettering on this can. That's cross-referencing. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to stack up visually these Dixie cups and find out how tall this thing is, this thing, this thing, this thing, and they don't stack very well. I tried doing it earlier. They wouldn't do it. So what I ended up doing was taping them together. So to make the tallest thing is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and about 6 3/4. Of these height things right there. Does that make sense? Okay. This is one of the most important things I'm teaching you, so I hope you understand. I can't think of any other way to explain it, really. But what I'm gonna do is go ahead and draw in this Dixie cup. This is the good side. So here's my Dixie cup. Not on the bottom of the paper. It's sitting on something. And it's basically a cone with the top cut off upside down. So it comes in like that. About like this. And what I meant about drawing things using a plumb bob, there's several different ways you can do bottles, or anything that's symmetrical, the same on the left as it is on the right. And I think all those are sort of frustrating. So if you think of having a straight line coming down through the middle of whatever you're drawing, and you start off and you put a line here, make this line the same length, and make this line same width here, and this one the same width here, hopefully. Have the shoulder flare out, have the shoulder flare out, shoulder flare down, round it over, and you can draw it on down. And at the bottom, I know, it's sitting on the table, and you think, well, it's gonna have a flat bottom. Well, yes, it's got a flat bottom, but look, it's curved. So don't do this, do this. One of the hardest things I have to get across to beginners is draw what you see, don't draw what you can't see. And what I mean by that is, I cannot see where I'm sitting, the top of that cap on that pop bottle. So if I were to draw that, it's going to look like a rectangle. I know it's a cylinder, but that's what I see. I'm not going to draw this because I can't see that. That's what I see. If it was a little shorter, or if I was standing up, I could see that. But I'm going to draw what I see, not what I think I see. Okay. If I wanted to do another bottle, you can try this. Now try to match it. Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. When you're drawing and you realize there's something wrong in your drawing and you can't figure out what it is, hold it up to a mirror. And the problem usually just jumps out. Or turn it upside down. That's not too shabby. Another way you can do bottles is like when we were in grade school and we made Valentines. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's not cheating. It's a time saver. starving artist and whatnot. Well, I've read a lot of biographies about the artists in various centuries because I like a lot of different styles of art. There's a symmetrical bottle. All you gotta do is trace around it. Works for me, saves time, it's exact. Okay. Anyway, I think it was Marc Chagall. He was a Russian painter who migrated to France to get away from the czars. And he started each day by eating half of a herring, a fish, for breakfast. Well, the Europeans don't eat bacon and eggs or cold cereal for breakfast anyway. They eat cheese bread or something. But that's what he had for breakfast. And he'd paint all day long, and for dinner he'd eat the other half of the herring. And I'm thinking, my gosh, that's got to be pretty boring. One of the Impressionists, Pissarro, had a whole bunch of kids and a wife, and they lived on turnips. They ate turnips 3 times a day. And I don't like turnips any time of the day. And they lived on it. I mean, you know, these artists put in the time. They made their suffrage for their art. Unfortunately, they made their wives and girlfriends and families suffer too. Okay, enough art history. So now I need to find out how many of those cups stacked on each other would equal that can of almond paste or whatever that stuff is to the left. So I'm going to take my measurement, mark the top with the top of my charcoal and the bottom with my thumb, just like I did before. And I'm going to move that on top. So I come up with about 3/4. So here's my Dixie cup here. And if you excuse me. If you notice, the almond whatever is about, I don't know, that far behind the cup. So here's my Dixie cup height, but I need to go 3/4 more. So this would be about 3/4. So I come up, and here's my 3/4. And it sticks over the Dixie cup about like this. Anytime you're drawing like this, the verticals have got to be parallel with the sides of your paper. Otherwise, it's going to look like the objects are leaning or falling down or something, and you don't want that. That can is about 1 Dixie cup wide, so I'll just do this. Seems a little wide. I'll narrow that down just a little bit. Better than my eye. And I'm not worried about the lettering and all that. I'm worried about the basic shapes. I got you a sawed-off cone, a couple cylinders, and a couple boxes. Oh, I was going to show you another way to make a bottle. I'm sorry. I knew it was something. Okay. You can take the basic shapes and make them work for you. So if you take a cylindrical shape, and you take a cone shape, put right on top of that. And you cut this off about here. And you put another cylindrical shape. Presto, you got your bottle. And this curve, and this curve are going to be the same. If it's got a label on it, it wraps around that round bottle like this, same curve, all the way up. And it's going to be on the bottle straight, like that. So you erase this stuff you don't need. Say you've got some liquid in the bottle. Say it's about here. It also is going to lay in there like that. This curve and this curve are the same because it's following the outside curve of the bottle. So that's one way to make the basic shapes do what you want them to do. I mean, you can turn them into houses and animals and flowers. You could take this same cylindrical shape and really shorten it down like that, but turn it sideways. Something like that. Put you some petals out here. This ought to be more of an angle like that. When you get to drawing leaves and things on plants, leaves tend to either be convex or concave. So let's put a leaf right here. There's the divider. It's going to be a convex. It's curved this way. So one side's going to be a little bit lighter than the other. Like that. And it's going to be concave. Like that. So when you're sitting down to draw, try to analyze what you're looking at. Are they squares? Are they boxes? Are they triangles? Are they pyramids? Are they circles? Are they spheres? Look at what you're looking at. I mean, the cylindrical shape comes in all different shapes and sizes. It's necks, it's torsos, it's arms, it's legs, it's tree trunks, it's tree limbs, it's straws, it's a lot of liquid food containers, cans of tomatoes and beans and whatever. The boxes come in all different shapes. It could be a stack of books, it could be a tractor trailer, it could be a car, it could be a house, it could be any number of things. Just look at stuff. Look where the light's coming from. Look where the shadow's falling. Look at it again in the afternoon, and then tomorrow morning look at it and see how it's different. I like to look at ads on TV and try to figure out, well, why did they put the camera here when the product's there? What if they had put the product there and the camera here? How would it look different? And it will get to the point, hopefully, that you'll be looking at stuff still looking at the road, hopefully, but you'll be driving and you'll say, oh, look at those clouds. Oh, look at the shadow of that tree. You know, you just get in the habit of looking and seeing and analyzing what you're looking at. That's the fun part of art. And once you can get it from up here, down here, onto here, that's the greatest thing. Basically, drawing is a history of what you're looking at. It's a series of dots or marks or whatever you want, however you want to apply it. If you want to shade this in with stippling, which is dots, you know, it's literally just little dots. Again, sainthood is needed to do this.
A little patience.
I'm not going to be there. I may be pure of heart, but I'm not a saint. So anyway, back to our little still life. So the next thing in height is that manwich hand. And again, I've got to get the top and the bottom of the Dixie cut marked off, and put the imaginary one on top of the real one, and it's about 7/8 as high. It's also about this much taller than that coconut can. So if I put it here, I'm in pretty good shape. Let me mark the Dixie cup again and find out how wide that manwich can is. It's actually a little bit wider than the cup, so I'll come over this way. It's in the same plane as the pan on the left, so I'm just going to roll that over. Freehand is. Okay. Once again, get that measurement. Remember, keep that arm straight, one eye shut, because what you're doing when you shut an eye, you're getting monocular vision, not binocular. It sort of flattens things down. By keeping your arm straight, you're always consistent. Don't go like this, don't go like this. Keep your arm straight. Okay, I get about 3 1/4 on the Triscuits, so it's set just a tad back from the pan, not much. I'll put it about here. Somebody asked me, I think it was last week, how you could get things right in a drawing or painting. This is one way. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, and about 1/4. There's the top of it. Let's see how wide it is. Now I can't see the bottom, but I can see the top. If I figure out how wide it is there. Almost 2. It lines up about here. if you wrap your fingers on the side of the sketchbook like this and keep steady pressure, you can pretty much draw a straight line without using a ruler. Now I need to go to the grape nuts box. It's funny, during the COVID lockdowns and all that stuff, grape nuts was one of the things that could not be bought at any price. And I know who you were. Fortunately, now they're not, they're almost as hard to find as toilet tissue was. I don't
Yeah, this
understand.
time last year, we were all struggling.
I made a mistake there. I need to go up to here. Talking too much. Easy correction. Glad I caught it now though. Thought that looked kind of strange. Okay, so you know, I was talking about the positive and negative space in a picture. There is no right ratio of positive to negative. Some people feel very comfortable with just a few things in their pictures, and other people will have 119 things in theirs. It's what makes you happy. There is no right or wrong. So I'm not going to say, well, you know, put 17 more things in your picture when you send in pictures of photographs of your drawings, which I hope you will. Amber and I like to look at your photographs of your work. Okay, I can tell just looking that the grape nut box is a little bit taller than the cracker box. And I can also see some of the front, you know, the flat side of the cereal box. So it's going to be about here, and it's going back into space. So I'm going to do that angle right there to get that sense of depth. Let me see if I'm right on the height. Double check myself. Since I cannot see the bottom of the grape nut box, I'll count from the manwich can up. Almost 1.5. Going this way. The peanut butter jar is got a strange angle to it, top and bottom. See if I can duplicate that. Let's see how tall it is first. My mind's so congested today, sorry. About 2 1/4, 2 1/3, somewhere in there. So, needs to be about here. I've started this French series on Netflix called Call My Agent, and it's very funny. It's very funny. It's about an office full of showbiz agents and their oddball clients, and some of the shenanigans they all get in. Okay. Hopefully it looks sort of like a peanut butter jar. It's not wide enough. What I can do is still use the profile. Something like this, you just need to check and double check yourself, make sure your measurements are right. What was that? Charcoal can be a little messy. Here's a tip. When you're shading in either charcoal or pencil, take a clean sheet of paper and lay down over what you've done, so you're not laying your hand in charcoal or pencil, and just move it as you need to shade on. But you see, my hand's getting dirty, but it wipes right off. It washes right off. No muss, no fuss. Okay, now the main character, the tall guy, the coat ball. And I think we decided that was, what, 6.5? No, it was 5 3/4. So it's back from the jelly, I mean, the peanut butter jar a little bit. Now for the width. Another tip I can give you, again, in movies and TV shows, you may have seen artists doing this with their fingers. What they're doing, they're looking for a good composition. You can take a piece of paper and just cut a rectangle or square in there. It has the same thing. Because you may be outside and this is pretty interesting, that's okay, but you turn over here and man, that's the money shot right there. And you can look at it vertically or horizontally, either one. Another thing you can do is when you're working from photographs, which I highly recommend, since the light is always constant, if you can work from your own photographs, that's even better. You're not copying somebody else's. Things like newspaper photographs, magazine articles with photographs, calendars, greeting cards, all that stuff is copyrighted. So if you got a copy, do this. Get the bird from this one, get the bush from this one, get the log cabin from this one, and make your own composition. That way nobody can say, well, you copied it. But anyway, you can take a photograph and lay it down and maybe make a smaller window, is what they're called. Maybe something this size. And slide it around on the photograph. Because you may have a picture of your Aunt Tilly's flower garden, and she's got 19 species of flowers and 500 flowers there, and you don't want to do all those flowers. So, slide this around and say, oh, well, this looks okay, but that's the one I want. That's got the most variety of flowers, or it's the best lid, or whatever. Just a couple helpful tips, hopefully. So I need to get a wider sheet of paper to make, a longer sheet of paper to make my Coke bottles. I have got, you can buy fancy sets of pencils. I've had this one for 25 years, and I draw a lot. And you can see I haven't used these very much. This set runs from an 8B to a 2H. And again, 2B falls about in the middle of that scale I started the program off with. So if you master that 2B, you're fine. So anyway, let's see. It needs to go from here to there, height-wise. That looks something like this. This is one of the funky bottoms I was talking about. Got all these ins and outs on it. if you've been with me before, I've related some humorous stories of people I've worked with along the line. And the last 9-to-5 type job I had, I was a cashier at a Kroger grocery store. And I worked with some real characters as baggers. This one guy one day, I sent, I don't know if it was a relish or something down the line, and he picked the jar up like this, and he's looking at it. He said, "What's this stuff? It looks like it's already been ate."
Was that Gary?
No, that was another one. Yeah, I had some choice candidates. This one kid wanted to work on these extremely tall wind turbines. I mean, you know, those things are hundreds of feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
He had no fear of heights. And he looked at me one day in all seriousness and he said, "Why do the people in frozen food wear gloves?"
Oh, Lord.
These are our future leaders, folks. I'm glad I'm at the age I am. This one guy used to come in all the time, and he had a truck driver's tan. And a truck driver's tan, for you guys who don't know what a truck driver's tan is his left side is tan, driving this way, okay? It's like a farmer's tan, runs up to about here. Well, this guy's tan had turned into cancer, and it looked terribly painful. It looked terrible. And I felt so sorry for him. He's a nice old guy. And the bagger said, "Ew, what's wrong with you?" I felt about this tall.
Oh my God.
I mean, I couldn't believe he said that to the customer.
Yeah, young adults these days don't really have a filter.
No, they don't. You know, they have access to all these things on the internet and whatnot, and they're still done as a box of rocks sometimes. Okay. That's not wide enough, but I can make it. Actually, some artists do make it wide enough here in a minute. Anyway, the jobs where I worked by myself, I really enjoyed working by myself.
I say.
I only worked with three of them that were going to college. And I don't want to discriminate against people who go to college, but you could tell. I mean, you could just tell. They had all their oars in the water a little deeper than the other people. There's one guy, I think he was a sophomore in college already. And he came up front and he was like, I can't see, I'm blinded. I said, "Richard, what's the matter? What happened?" We had this manager, everybody hated her. I mean, everybody. When she left, we threw a party in celebration. Anyway, he said, I saw Miss Tanner, and she was squatting in the back room, and she had a brown brown thong on, and I'm blinded. can't see. I said, Richard, you kill me. Oh, kids. I got a little thick on the neck and the cap of this bottle, so I got to skinny them down just a little bit more. Okay, so now this is completely drawn in and you can start to shade. And again, if you squint and look at what you're wanting to shade in, it helps. So, let me make a couple of erasures here, things I don't need. After you spray it with Aquanet, you can go darker, but you can never go lighter. So anyway, I think I've filled up my space pretty nicely, top to bottom, left to right. And it looks pretty representational of what I've got set up over there. So I'm going to start on the left. Lay this down so I don't lay my hand in all this drawing. And I'm going to make a puddle. Charcoal. And the top of that cracker box is pretty light, so I'm going to shade it in with this technique. And remember, I'm using the side of this cone it's actually the sky and a little landscape that I've got printed on the front of the box. I originally started off with the Triscuit box laying down, and it was actually shorter than the Dixie cup, and that wouldn't work, so I had to set it back up. Now it's about the same value, but it's wheat or something, so I'm going to make vertical marks to indicate that it's different from what I just shaded in. There's a lot of verticals in life, but you got to have some horizontals too. You know, look out your window. You see bushes and trees and telephone poles and all those sorts of things, but you also see streets and sidewalks and bottoms of mountains or tops of mountains or something in there. This also adds a little textural interest because basically everything up there is smooth. No, there's no pineapples, there's no peaches, there's no, cloth that could be rough. Everything's pretty smooth. There's a triangular shape here. I'm just going to leave it white. But hopefully you'll be able to utilize this technique in your drawing and your painting to get things the proper size. There's one other thing you can do. If you want to replicate a photograph, make a copy of that photograph, and there's two things you can do here. Say I've got a photograph here. And I got, I don't know, so I've got three people in the photograph. Okay, real simple. I can't draw better than this. This is quick. And Amber, I'm not putting mask on these guys. Okay, here we go. Now, one thing you can do is on that copy, you can do a gridding system. And you need that ruler. Hang on here a second. Oh, it's over there. Okay, I'm not gonna do it. Maybe I got two. Not such a lot. We'll say that this is a ruler. There's half 1 inch, half 1 inch, so forth, all the way across. Okay, so all right, here's the sun's over here, so all these folks are in shadow. Anyway, across the top, make a mark every half inch, every quarter inch, however much detail you want. Like so. Assuming these are all the same. Down here, do the same thing. Okay. Now, you connect this line to this line. And these two dots, and these two little marks. Do this all the way across the paper. Take more time than I'm taking. Do a neat job. Okay, far enough there. Now I'm going to do down the side, same thing. Basically, you're making a grid system. If you're handy on the computer, you can print out on a piece of clear plastic this grid system and lay over your photograph, and you won't hurt the photograph, and you don't have to draw out all these little boxes. But I'm not handy on the computer, so I've always had to do it this way. Okay. Now you connect all these little lines, just like before. You'll also will need a yardstick and that ruler coming up. I'm not going to go all the way down with these either. Okay. So, number across the top. Letter down the side. On a bigger sheet of paper, draw you a bigger rectangle. Where you had 1/4 inch here, do 1/2 inch over here, or 1 inch or whatever. You need to make it bigger here, since you got a bigger surface to cover. Connect all these guys. You could do this and take a drawing that was, this size and blow it up as big as that wall over there and make it fit. When the old fresco artists like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and those guys, Giotto, Raphael, were doing these huge paintings on walls and ceilings and whatnot. They used a similar system almost, but they would do full-size drawings of whatever they were putting in, humans or ox or angels or whatever, and they had a tool and had a handle and had a wheel that spun around and had little like spurs on that wheel, and as it would turn, they would say, okay, run around this apple and make these little holes in this apple, or around the apple every so often, and they would put this up against the ceiling or wall or whatever, and they'd take a little bag that had chalk dust in it, and they'd dust it like this, and then they take the paper down, and there was the little dots of the apple or ox or whatever they were going to do a picture of up on the wall or ceiling. And that's how they did their painting. And these drawings were called cartoons. They weren't funny. They were, I'm not sure when cartoons picked up the humor like we think of today, but that's another little art history thing there for you. Anytime you need to be pretty precise on something like a portrait, I would recommend you do this. Okay, so again, take more time than I'm taking. do a nice, neat job. So, a couple more lines here. So I hope you get a chance to experiment with charcoal and with the pencil. Since we did a charcoal still life, why don't you try an outdoor scene of something, a bush, a mailbox, a birdhouse, you know, just something in the pencil. Okay, so we've got the numbers across the top and letters down the side. Now, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, okay, the first line I see is this mountain and it's E1. So I come 1E and it's about like that. And D, it's about like that. And number 2, D, it's more like this. And it's more like this and this guy. And up in here, this, and it swoops down like this. And you jump over to the head. Let's start with E3. So here's 3, E. Real tall. Like that. F. Comes down to H. That. Here's a collar. Like that. 4 E, so like this. So this is how you can enlarge perfectly what you want to enlarge. So that's a lot of tips and tricks for you to try this week. And hopefully you're keeping a list of all this stuff that I'm giving you so you can always refer back to it. Because if you're like me, you won't remember next week what I taught you this week. Thank you guys. I hope you have a good week of drawing. It doesn't matter what you draw, just practice, practice, practice. That's how you get better. Trust me. See you next week. Have fun.